Testing sound. Testing sound. We have C. Farsight back in action after missing in action for a while. Glad to see he is safe and well. And back in the sound checks again. Cool. Welcome back, C. Farsight. And other people, welcome Wargamer Ape and Donnie Cobb. And thank you guys for joining. And welcome everybody. I guess I'll address the elephant in the room. My shelves are bare. This shelving, formerly completely loaded with a 40K business, is now empty. Actually, my table is still here, but all the terrain is gone. And the other side of my basement is completely packed up. So the basement reno is coming in just under 3 weeks. And all of this stuff is now elsewhere. So, yeah. In fact, the only thing I have on my shelf right now is the new AdMech book, which I just picked up today. So there you go. You can sit on my shelf there. It can be our background for tonight, you know. AdMech Tactica. So, speaking of AdMech Tactica, if you want to watch a cool video on how to deal with new AdMech, do check out Custodes Central on YouTube, which is Protoculture's Custodes PowerPoint style YouTube channel on tactics, which is great. So do check that out. Custodes Central, his most recent video on how to retool yourself to deal with new AdMech. Very topical. So do check out his channel. All right, so tonight is Custodes Tactica episode 58. That's a bit distracting. I keep looking at it now. And tonight we'll be talking about the few points changes that we had in the recent chapter approved, as well as the changes to secondaries in the new GT mission book. Now, there's been some hate online about why we need new books, why these changes could not just have been updated in an errata or an FAQ. The same people will then complain that there's too many FAQs and erratas to keep track of and they need to print out all that stuff. So you can't please everybody. At some point, we should be happy that they are active and engaged and changing things as often as they are, and leave it at that. And you can consume it in whatever format you wish. Whether you want to buy the book or just download the countless number of PDFs out there, or just scratch it off your existing copy and just write a new number. I mean, you can do it however you like. But let's not go back to the dark days where GW doesn't engage with anybody. Nobody wants that. So people should just be a bit happier sometimes. Anyway, so news. Let's see. So in the news, Trajan Valoris, again, is very disappointed with his choice of relic weapon, as he sees yet another compatriot, this new supreme commander of the sisters, take yet another better relic weapon from the Custodes armory. So Trajan, again, very disappointed with his own choice. So hopefully he gets it right when our new book comes out and he takes a proper relic weapon when that actually happens. In other news, we now have hordes and hordes of T5 orcs coming our way. 100, 120, 160, 200 T5 orcs. Chew through that. I know they don't have any armor save, but going from T4 to T5 makes a huge difference for infantry, and good luck chewing through that many boys' bodies while getting pummeled by jets and mech guns and all sorts of other things that they have. So we'll see what their points is, but chapter approved just came out and they're probably not any different from what it is in their book. So I would assume that they're going to be decently priced, and we're going to see a lot of boys very soon. In other news, Psychic Meta is on its way, so Grey Knights and Thousand Suns will be the next books after Orcs and Sisters. And so that ushers in a brand new level of misery for us custodians as we struggle with taking mortal wounds from every single unit on the board. With our 6-up save and the few stratagems that we have, our T3 sisters who don't seem that useful for anti-psychic shenanigans, and maybe taking a Calexis to eat a few bolter shots before they die, and then we eat the same amount of spite. So Psychic meta is coming, so hopefully we can squeak our way through that and to the other side. Okay, so other news and updates. So Ontario 40K League is still a go. The new official start date is August 2nd, so beginning of August, by which time, in my calculation, if everyone goes and gets their vaccines as they should, we should be in stage 3 or just past stage 3 of Doug Ford's amazing reopening plan. And so we, as an executive, decided to, instead of keep pushing it back, just put it at a date where we're pretty sure we're going to be able to do it and just launch at that time. So it looks like a go for August launch for Ontario 40K League. For those people who have already signed up for the Ottawa division on BCP, that is still active. You can still sign up for that now if you want, but you could also just wait. The people who have signed up and you still want to play, I still got your money. You're still signed up. You don't need to do anything to that registration. And of course, if you want to bail, then just let me know. I can refund you the money, no problem. So, but if you're signed up and you're still going to play, you don't need to do anything. So that is the Ontario 40K League update. In disappointing news, unfortunately, it just doesn't look like it's going to be possible for myself and my fellow Canadians who have to fly to go to Charity Hammer this year, which is also in late July or beginning of August. It's not in the cards. It's going to be too tight. There's going to be lots of travel restrictions still, quarantine requirements, which most of us can't afford to do. And unfortunately, it's just not in the cards for this year. It didn't work out. But Can Hammer will still be, of course, streaming one of the stream channels for all the Charity Hammer action. We will be doing that as usual, as we have every single Charity Hammer. And hopefully we can attend the next one in person when the world is a little bit back to normal. But it doesn't look like it's going to be a thing this year. Also, flying is really difficult, very expensive, very hard to find flights. It's just a not easy thing to do right now. So that's a little bit disappointing, especially for me, but it is what it is in a year of disappointments. Okay, so speaking of disappointments, I'm just joking. Not going to be too salty tonight about these new points and secondaries changes. There haven't been many changes, and I guess that's good and bad depending on your outlook or what you were expecting. To be honest, I didn't even realize that a book was due, so I didn't have any expectation, and then boom, it was just suddenly dropped on everybody. That's kind of what happened last time too, but so we do have some points changes and secondaries changes coming up. Keep in mind they're not actually live yet as of right now because the book is not released. But we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight and go from there. Before we start, next week's show is a much requested show on wish listing for our new codex. Now, we've had enough codexes now where we could make fairly, maybe, not accurate guesses, but we can wish list without being too crazy. We don't want it to become a crazy fantasy world show, but we're going to just wish list a few reasonable things which we might want to see or expect to see or need to see in our new book. And I'm going to be joined by Jeremiah Pettit, who is Battle Juice on Discord. And he's a very prolific Custodes player in the States. He's going to join me next week, and we're going to talk about wish listing for the new book. So tune in for that. Watch out for the schedule this weekend when we release the schedule. Tomorrow night will be podcast. We will be talking about the secondaries and points changes as well, but more in general, not just for Custodes. And I'll be joined by my usual co-hosts for that. So do check us out tonight. And then Thursday night, Nick will be continuing his painting stream, continuing his work on Bellacore with Chimera Colors. It's looking pretty cool, so do check out Nick's stream on Thursday night. So in the chat, welcome C Farsight, Retio Santi, Striker119, and Protoculture, welcome. Okay, so changes. There's not been many points changes for Custodes. I personally did not expect a lot of points changes for us, to be honest. So let's see. Land Raiders went down like 20 points. Unfortunately, our Land Raider didn't seem to go as cheap as the rest of the Land Raiders. But I don't think that makes the Land Raider a must play by any means or any stretch. And I don't think you're going to suddenly start seeing tons of Land Raiders out there. What's interesting, though, it does put Land Raider now like straight into the same price bracket as a Telemon, and the Telemon went up 20 points. So the Telemon going up 20 points is unfortunate, obviously. 20 points is a decent hike. It's already pretty expensive, so another 20 points is like, If you're running 2 or 3 Telemons now, that's 40 or 60 points. So that's a decent chunk of something off of your army. And Custodes don't really have, you end up losing whole models or even having to axe units or switch units around. So 60 points is significant if you were running triple Telemon. Of course, I blame all the triple Telemons for this 20-point hike because... Anyway, I'm just joking. You can't blame people for playing what's good, and clearly that's one of the best units in our book. And so GW felt, for some reason, that because we were owning the meta with triple Telemons, they needed to be nerfed. Anyway, 20-point hike puts it back to around what it was kind of like before. And so we'll see. We'll see what becomes of the Telemon when the book and everything comes out. It'd be nice to go back to Strength 9, for example. But it is what it is. I think probably I'm not running triple Telemon at that cost. 2 Telemons, though, still very much doable with not that much sacrificed. And the meta is seriously in flux right now with Drukhari spamming the board, Admech now out there spamming the board, and soon we're going to have 2 elite armies, T-Suns and Grey Knights with mortals, and then we're probably going to have hordes and hordes of boys, and sisters are coming in hard. So, I mean, the meta is really difficult to predict right now, and it's going to have to be very flexible. And so part of that flexibility we talked about before was maybe is the reemergence of the Caladius tank because of the its shooting and the mobility, and now 20 points cheaper. So the Caladius got 20 points cheaper for both weapon types, and so that's only good, obviously, to get cheaper, bringing it closer to that 200-point mark. So I think that's a fairly competitive price for the Caladius. Maybe it could be slightly cheaper, or we could get the gun back. But I think we're starting to see some Caladiuses show up in lists again because we need volume of fire, and the Caladius does give us some of that volume of fire with the twin Iliastus. I still don't rate the two shots on the Caladius. I think you might as well just take a different platform for that gun. 2 shots is really bad. Maybe we'll see that improved in our book. Tune in next week. But I think just over 200 points for the Caladius now is pretty decent. So if you were running a Caladius before and you dropped a Telemon for a Caladius maybe, so now you're 40 points kind of better off than you were before. So I think that's a decent deal. In other news, Wardens went down 5 points. It's difficult to know what to make of this. I don't think it makes Wardens good. I think the problem with Wardens is they're stuck between Guardians and Terminators. And so, as I said in my deep dive about Terminators and Wardens, Wardens are stuck between Guardians and Terminators. And the problem is Guardians keep getting cheaper and Terminators get cheaper as well. And so that the Wardens get cheaper, that doesn't make them any better compared to the other two. Now, if Terminators get more expensive, Guardians get cheaper, and Wardens get cheaper, then that makes the needle move a little bit for Wardens. If Wardens get more expensive and Terminators get cheaper, then that sucks for Wardens and vice versa for Guardians. So they're stuck in the middle of these 2 units that are both better at what they do, and the Wardens don't have anything additional to offer. Not being Terminators really sucks for them. A 6-up Feel No Pain really sucks. Doesn't make up for anything. They have the option of both weapons, but that doesn't make them better or worse than the other 2 units. And so 5 points here and there on the cost of a Warden, I don't think makes that much of a difference in terms of, I want to bring Wardens now. So unfortunately for the Wardens, I don't think a 5-point reduction is going to cut it, making them super pop out on people's army lists anymore. So that's too bad. And those are the only points changes that we got in our book, which, as I said, I didn't expect a lot of points changes, but there we go. So not a lot of rejigging for people's list in terms of points, but certainly to accommodate for the now hot, fast and heavy release of codexes that we expect. That's going to be the true acrobatics of what we're doing these days. Okay, speaking of acrobatics, let's talk about changes to secondaries. So keeping in mind that the book is not out yet, I've not heard anybody tell me that they've seen any changes to the actual missions. So we'll see, but so far I've not heard any scuttlebutt on any source online that the missions themselves have changed, but the full leak of all the secondaries has come out, and so we're going to talk about those tonight. We're going to compare them to what they were before, not that it matters because you're not going to play the old missions, but and we're going to talk about maybe things that we might start taking now versus things that we might stop taking now that we used to take. So we're going to go over that, and hopefully this will help people. Now, keep in mind that this is theory-based. Nobody's played these missions yet. Nobody's played these secondaries. The meta's changing very quickly. 3 new books coming out in like the next month. So, and I, like a lot of many people, are not playing a lot of games right now. So take it for what you are. As always, this is opinion, but opinion based on experience. Okay, so first we'll go over battlefield supremacy secondaries. So the first one is engage on all fronts, and I do not think that has changed at all. And so I think engage on all fronts is still a decent secondary to take, although it is becoming harder to take in the meta these days. You don't want to overextend and get picked off little bits by armies like Drukhari or Admech with a lot of shooting. You want to expose yourself, and so it's getting hard to score engage well. Luckily, some of these other, the next one we talk about has changed and maybe helps us a little bit. So, Line Breaker is now behind enemy lines. This is all great if you never played in 8th, but all these names get confusing if you played previous editions. Anyway, so behind enemy lines now is the old Line Breaker. And basically the same as before, if you get 2 units in your opponent's deployment zone, you get 4 points. But now if you only get 1 unit in there, you get 2 points. So that is the big change. And so that actually makes it easier because you can score a few points and then at the end of the game maybe score 1 or 2 turns of 4 and maybe end up with like 8 to 10 points, which is pretty good. Now, if you were tooling your list specifically with like Alaris Cap and stuff to score behind the old Line Breaker, then obviously you will find this very easy and it will be the same for you. But I think you're going to start finding that is going to be much more difficult to do against like Orcs, Sisters, Horde. These big Horde armies are going to cover a lot of space and you're not going to have a spot even just to drop your 1 captain down. And so then it may become, if you choose this, then you're just getting 2 points if you happen to get somebody into the zone in your turn. And then it becomes not a great secondary. So I think against elite armies, that trick will still work. But then with a meta that's full of Horde and elites, then just like, well, how much do you tool your list to try and score this secondary, right? So I think they've made it easier to score the secondary, but probably it becomes a little bit of a trap if you don't tool for it now. That's what I think. I think it's easier to score some points, but I think it's actually maybe more of a trap. Okay, the next secondary is Stranglehold, which is which was Domination. And so Domination was hold more than half the objectives to score 3 points. And now it is you have to control 3 objectives and hold more than your opponent at the end of your turn. So it is kind of harder in some missions and easier in some missions, and also it depends very much on what your opponent is playing. Holding 3 or more objectives is always tricky for us, being a small elite army, and so I feel like taking domination is very difficult for us to take. It always has been, and it remains so with this change. So it doesn't change for us, and in fact, maybe is a little bit harder for easier for opponents to score this on us than domination used to. So I feel like it's a bit of a nerf for us. On 5 objective maps, I mean, you still have to hold 3, but then if you hold 3, you already hold more. But still, it's just the need to hold 3 is always difficult for us. So I think this is probably a wash either way, but probably maybe slightly bad. Behind enemy lines, so just to go back to that, behind enemy lines does make it easier for your opponent to score on us, because it's harder for us to stop people getting in our zones because we don't screen out very well, and so now it's even easier for them to score some points off of that if they just get 1 unit. So I think again it makes it harder for us to deny secondaries that change to behind enemy lines. Let's see. I think Stranglehold is just domination, but easier on Signature Up. Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. But okay. So no mercy, no respite, which are the kill type secondaries. So the first one is no prisoners, which again an old secondaries name, but no prisoners, which was thin the ranks. Now in old thin the ranks, you got one kind of point, not 1 point, but you got 1 tick for every model that you killed, and you divide your total ticks by 10, and that's how many points you got. But now it is 1 tick for every wound, which obviously is it depends on the army you're playing against, but potentially that hurts elite armies, right? Because you would never pick thin the ranks against us because you're getting like 18 models. But now you're getting 18, say, times 3 or 4, which still isn't a great pick, but it definitely gets you more points for the work that you're doing to kill us. And so similarly against other elite armies. And the interesting thing, though, is it now completely excludes vehicles, monsters, and characters. So killing vehicles, monsters, and characters gets you zilch. And now you get a point per wound for everything else. So for us, I mean, if we are playing hordes, like you would pick this against the same armies that you pick it before, which is horde armies. I still think it's a trap to pick this against elite armies with multi-wound models, because they won't have enough wounds. And then if they have a vehicle or 2 and the characters don't count, then you're just stuck. Like, just do the math in your head, it's going to be a bad pick. So I still don't think that this secondary is very good, just in general, and definitely not good for us to pick. It's going to be good to pick against hordes. So if you got to kill 200 boys, then pick this. It's also good, Protocol says, against Necrons, because every time they come back, you just kill them again. So you can just kill 1 unit over and over again and get you like 80 wounds worth of points. So if you think you can kill that many, then go for it. But otherwise, it's a very niche pick. And against us, I don't think anybody should be picking this against us. That would just be a mistake, and you should laugh internally and enjoy their lack of points on at least 1 secondary. So nobody should be picking this against us, especially if you're bringing like dreads and stuff. I can't see anybody picking that against us. Okay. Grind them down. So grind them down basically is unchanged. Basically kill more, and that's unchanged. Okay, so while we stand, we fight is now gone, unfortunately, since we'd all gotten so used to typing WWSWF. So now we can get rid of that completely and just type TTL, or to the last it's now called. And basically this is changed to make it more like partial, and not really progressive because it's still at the end of the game, but more partial points. So before, your whole unit has to be alive or die, and get 5 points for the units that you nominate. But now, if your unit has separated, so combat squatting or like Unleash the Lions or whatever, and you kill some of them but not all of them, you get 3 points. So really, it for us has not changed. I don't think anybody was running the Alaris Unleash the Lions trick to score while we stand anyway. If they were running it in niche situations. But as a secondary that a lot of people have been running due to things like Telemons and Shield Guardians and things like that, then it basically unchanged for us. And I think it's unchanged for the opponents trying to deny us from scoring it. Will this help us if we pick it against... will this help us for other factions picking it? To be honest, I gotta tell you, I've not encountered a lot of combat squatting or anything like that so far. Even the Marine players I've played never really combat squatted or anything like that. So I don't know. I haven't experienced it yet, but actually I don't think anyone's ever picked While We Stand We Fight against me that I had to really worry about it. But for us picking it, I don't think this change makes any difference. So if you were gonna pick it, then still pick it. Okay. Purge the enemy. So Purge the enemy, which was some kill things, have actually seen quite a number of changes. So Assassination is now the name. It used to be Assassinate. Now it's Assassination. I guess they couldn't come up with a better word. So and that basically is unchanged, except now you get an extra point if you kill the character that was the Warlord. So so that's an extra point for the Warlord there. And Cut Off the Head, which is to kill the Warlord secondary, is now completely gone. That secondary is always shit, and they tried to fix it, and it's still shit. So then they just cut it completely. Now you get your bonus point if you kill the Warlord if you take Assassination. So I guess that's a good secondary if you were picking Assassination anyway against certain armies where the characters are being thrown at you. And so if you were picking Assassinate for 9 to 12 points, now you get 13 points, which that extra point could be the win. So so Assassinate is still a good pick if you were picking it already. Okay. The next one is Titan Hunter. So Titan Hunter, the only thing they changed was the breakdown of the points that you get for killing each Titanic. So you used to get 10 points for killing the first Titanic, 12 points for the second, and 15 for the third. So even if you just killed one knight, it was still a decent pick at 10 points. I mean, some of these other objectives are very difficult to get 10 points. So just killing one knight in a knight army was worth 10 points. Or if somebody souped in a knight, you just kill that one knight, and knights are not that hard to kill these days, you get your 10 points from that. So they have made that a little bit easier for the knight players out there. Now one knight is only 4 points, 2 knights is only 9 points, and then 3 knights is 15 points. So now it only becomes worthwhile if you can kill 2 knights at least, and even then not as good as it was before. So really 2 to 3 knights now you need to kill. Now whether that makes a difference to play against knight lists, probably not right now. If their book changes and you end up having to kill knights more than just dance around them, then this secondary change might make a bigger difference. But yeah, so definitely though, like farming one knight is no longer as lucrative as it used to be. Okay, Bring It Down was unchanged, but now it's in full print with the new scores that you get for Bring It Down. Okay, let's talk about Shadow Operations next. Okay, so Raise the Banners, I believe, was unchanged. It's still, I find, probably not a great secondary, although like John Lennon runs it all the time. But I think as pure Custodes, is really hard to be efficient with Raise the Banners. You have to spend a lot of time doing actions, and then you have to guard your objectives, and you maybe end up with like 6 to 8 points at the most if you're do well. So anyway, that hasn't changed. So Banners is the same. Okay, the next secondary is called Investigate Signals. Signal. It used to be Investigate Sites. Now it's Investigate Signal. So basically, this has changed very little. This is the one where you have to move a infantry unit that's not a character to the center of the battlefield, and they have to do an action there. And there can't be any enemy within 6 inches of the center. And then they just clarified it now that you only complete this action at the end of the turn if you're still there and there are still no enemy units within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. In the old book, they didn't have that. They just said it's just completed at the end of the turn. So I guess that kind of makes it just a clarification, although technically if you were playing raw, this makes it a bit harder, because, there could be a heroic intervention or something, and, you would lose that, you would fail that action. Anyway, but I feel like it's more just a clarification, so, okay. Scramblers. So Scramblers is gone. Scramblers has been replaced by Retrieve Octarius Data. And it's been reworked quite a bit. So the problem with Scramblers before was that you had to do, the action in your zone, the no man's land, and then your opponent's zone. And if you did all three, you got 10 points. And that's it. There's no progression, and it's all or nothing. And it's fairly easy, especially for some armies, to block the opponent's zone one. And then you would be screwed. You get 0. You don't get 2 or 5, or you just 0. And so you can see the trend in how the secondaries is they're trying to make secondaries more progressive. So that is what they've done with Retrieve Octarius Data. So now, instead of doing it your zone, opponent's zone, and enemy zone, now you have to do the action in each table quarter. And you have to be 6 inches away from any other table quarter. So you kind of have to be like not in the middle of the table quarter, but fairly close to the middle of the table quarter. You can't be sneaking in the edge and doing your action. You got to be with, more than like 6 inches is like, if your model only moves 6 inches, then it's going to take you some time. So, and you get, basically you count how many quarters you end up doing it. You only can do it once per quarter. So, and if you get it in only one table quarter, which obviously if you take this, everybody could get that in the first table quarter, then you get 0 points. But if you get 2, which everybody should be able to get at least 2 table quarters, then you get 4 points only. But at least you get some points. And then if you get 3, which you should be able to get to 3, but that's now only 8 points instead of 10, but at least you get your 8 points. And then if you do get 4, which I think should be fairly reasonable to get, now you only get 12 though. So it is now more progressive. It's not all or nothing. I think it's easier to do, and it is scores better too. If you manage to do it, actually scores 2 points more than Scramblers used to. So actually, I think it's a much better secondary for us than Scramblers was. And, especially if you got like units moving up the board, Venatari. So the same way that you were trying to score engage, basically, you could do this, although it does involve doing an action. And now you got to do 4 actions to score it. So, yeah, it's a little bit tricky, though, because it takes your unit out of doing something. So question, does it still have the limit of once per turn? Yeah, I think so. I think only one unit can do an action, a specific action per turn. I think that's in like the action rules or something. So yeah, so it is like easier to score, and you're more likely to get points from it rather than 0. But actually for us, with few units, we don't want to spend them in your opponent's like zone doing an action if they don't have to. Maybe it becomes a little bit limiting. I think you'll have to just play it, and obviously it's going to depend on what army your opponents are playing too. But that's an interesting change to the Scramblers. Okay, and the final one is Teleport Homers, which is now called Deploy Teleport Homers. So, Deploy Teleport Homers now it's called. And so this has changed. First of all, the big change is that you can do a Teleport Homer with a biker. This is a big change. Big change for us especially. Because Teleport Homers with a biker is going to be make it way cool. And of course, so we got our jet bikes who now can do this action. Normally jet bikes can't do any actions. So, obviously, so a little units of a 3-man unit of bikers could do it. Your biker cap can do it, which is amazing. And now you can also do it within 12 inches of your opponent's zone, not necessarily in your opponent's zone. So if you do it within 12 inches of the opponent's zone, you get only 2 points. But if you do it in your opponent's zone, you get the 4 points as usual. But basically, to be within 12 inches of your opponent's deployment zone in these tables these days is like first turn. Very doable by a unit of bikes or biker cap. And so a lot of people run the unkillable biker cap to do things. And it's a bit of a bait to try and get the enemy to shoot at it. And so now they're going to really feel like they need to shoot at it or do something with it or touch it or put a unit in contact with it. And, because he's going to be able to get these points, and it's going to be way more progressive, 2 points, 4 points, 2 points, 4 points. And so I think if you were taking homers before, now you could definitely do that with your biker cap and not have to make something specially just to deploy homers, like people were running Alaris captains just to do this secondary. Now, of course, it can be thwarted. You could put a unit of 30 boys, how topical, onto your biker captain. You may never kill the biker captain, but he's never going to be able to do anything for the rest of the game, and then you're screwed. But, you could run him all the way down the side of the board. It can be fairly difficult to catch, and you can always fall back and stuff, and he moves very quickly. So, that is definitely something that we need to test, whether a 3-man bike unit or a biker cap can pull off 8, 10, 12 points from this pretty reliably. I suspect they can against other than against the biggest horde armies. It's going to force your opponent to put some resources into doing something about that captain, which is cool because then they're not putting those resources into the rest of your army. So I think that this is decent. It's obviously a big change for us because we have bikes and we have biker caps. Obviously, a similar change for other bike armies like Ravenwing and stuff like that. But those guys aren't as hard to kill as our biker cap. So if you're running the hard to kill biker cap, then now he's hard to kill and getting you points every turn because he ain't that killy, as we all know. So that's kind of cool. So I think this is actually a really good secondary for us now to think about taking, depending on what army your opponent is playing. So for sure, I think you should definitely consider this. I would even go so far as to say you might consider 3-man bike unit now for helping you do things like engage or behind enemy lines combo with teleport homers. So that combo was already a decent combo before, but you had to kind of spec for it. But now if you have a biker cap who can get you behind enemy lines for 2 points a turn and then get you teleport homer for 2 or 4 points a turn, that could be one dude getting you 4 to 6 points every turn and who's very hard to kill and requires some intensive resource devotion to take care of him. That resource is not going to the rest of your army. So I think that's a really nice 1-2 punch for a biker cap to be extremely useful and a pain in the ass for your opponent and get you points at the same time. So I really like that change. I'm not sure why they made that change, but they did. Okay. Very cool. Okay, so let's talk about the psychic ones. So the first one is Abhor the Witch, which is basically unchanged. And a secondary, I suspect we will be running a lot coming soon as Thousand Suns and Grey Knights come back into the fold. So get ready to abhor your witches. And then we'll end up with the same argument of do we take Inquisitors or do we not? Do we not take Inquisitors just because of Grey Knights and Thousand Suns? And we used to do that. We used to not take an Inquisitor on purpose just so we could use Abhor. And I think it will be like that again, especially if those books are better than they used to be, which they almost certainly will. So I feel like we will be trying to play for Abhor in the meta with those armies around. Okay, next one is Warp Ritual, which was Psychic Ritual, which is now Warp Ritual. This is now more progressive. So it used to be that you had to do it, do this, whatever, 3 times. You had to do this 3 or 4 times, and then you scored max points or you didn't. So now it's more progressive. Now, also, the Warp Ritual action is only Warp Charge 3. It used to be Warp Charge 4, so now it's basically unfailable. Very rarely failed. And this is the one where the Psyker has to be in the center of the battlefield. And so now if you do it 1 time, you get 3 points, 2 times you get 7 points, and 3 times you get 12 points. So it's a slightly less points, but it is more progressive and less all or nothing. So I think, obviously we're not doing this, but opponents will find this much easier to score points unless they get really unlucky, or unless they're making us spend a lot of CP on strats and stuff to stop this from happening. If you're running an Inquisitor to try and do Warp Ritual, then good for you. This is a lot easier for you now to score some points from this. Okay, next is Pierce the Veil, which I believe is pretty much unchanged and not a secondary that I don't think anybody was taking, and now being unchanged, I don't think anybody will continue to not take it. And finally, Psychic Interrogation, which used to be Mental Interrogation. Okay, so now this is the one where a Psyker targets an enemy character and does a warp charge for power. And if they do it, get 3 points every time they do that successfully. So it's basically unchanged. It's still warp charge 4. You still get 3 points for it. And but now it is within 24 inches instead of 18 inches. So it's a little bit easier distance-wise to get it to do it. But also the target has to be visible now, whereas before it did not have to be visible. So that is a little bit harder. So I feel like it's kind of it's a longer distance, but you require line of sight now. So so I think it makes it a little bit harder probably on balance. Okay. So that is the secondaries changes. So I don't feel like actually there's been too much change. It's hard to know with the meta so active how it changes for other armies, and we will talk about that more tomorrow. But for us, I think we're picking the same secondaries that we used to pick, except I feel like we're obviously we're not picking scramblers anymore, but I feel like maybe that secondary retrieve data becomes, depending on your list, becomes doable or not doable. And then I think deploy teleport homers is a really nice one. And then the other one, behind enemy lines, that combo where you're devoting things to go forward to get you 4 to 6 or maybe 8 points in a turn is something that that could be done. We'll see. The lists are still kind of revolving a lot around Dreads, Venatari, and Telemons, maybe with a couple of Caladus tanks thrown in there. 1 or 2 units like Guardians or Sagittarium. Like, our lists are pretty stale right now. They're kind of pretty much the same. We'll see what Jeremiah's been cooking up. He's been trying some weird shit recently. We'll see what he's cooking up next week. Kind of MSU style, like little bike units and stuff like that may start to become a thing. I had my MSU list that I've been planning to play, which is like little 3-man bike units and 3-man Venatari units. They might be good for this kind of thing. We're action units, getting behind enemy lines and homers and stuff like that. So that might be a way to play as well. Still with a core of like 1 or 2 Telemons and Dreads just to hold the middle. So I feel like that's probably where we go. If you can find the points, a Telemon, a couple of Dreads, Trajan in the middle, maybe a banner, 1 or 2 Caladus at the back, and then some small units of Venatari and or bikes just to go forward a little bit. Maybe that's the way forward. Who knows? So overall, some changes, nothing too meteoric, but some decent changes there. Okay. Questions on the chat. If you have it, please post them up. I'm going to go to the Discord right now. Questions. Okay, here we go. Okay, are we just taking tellies without ARS now? I'm not sure what ARS is. Sorry. If someone on chat knows what ARS stands for, let me know. I'll go to the next question first. Will Drukhari and AdMech releases lead to less Death Guard, meaning Iliasis becomes better? I actually don't feel like, I don't know, Protocol, everybody's meta is different, but Death Guard didn't seem to make as huge a splash as I thought that they would. And I think Drukhari and AdMech are good into Death Guard, and so maybe we will see less Death Guard. I don't know. We'll see. And And then also with Thousand Suns coming out, there might be some cool combos with Death Guard and Thousand Suns. Who knows? So who knows? I'll hold judgment on that for a second. Schreeder, what secondaries do we think we may start building for or be worried about other armies taking? So I think we covered that. Do we think trading Telemons for tanks is worthwhile? So I think you mean like taking Telemon out of your list and putting a Caladius in? Or else you mean like in a game, like sacrificing a Telemon to kill a tank. That's probably not good, but I think running 3 Telemons may become prohibitively expensive now, and maybe 1 to 2 Telemons, and maybe a Caladius is getting nicely cheap too, like we talked about before. Do the secondary points changes adjust the decision making for Shield Host selection or Shadowkeeper? I don't think it changes Shield Host at all. What do Wardens need to do differently than Guard to find a place in our lists? They can't go much lower in points. Well, it's true. They can't go lower than Guard. That's what it is. Like, they're just stuck in the middle. So they don't need to have points changes. They just need a role. And so that role needs to be baked into their rules or equipment or both, so that they have a role. They don't have a role right now, all right? So we got the cheap troop units with 3-up invulns, and then we got the hardcore Terminators with better weapons and strats, and then we got Wardens who do shit. So that's the problem. Like, you could cut Wardens out of the Codex and we wouldn't notice right now. So they don't need points changes. They don't need to go up or down 5. They're stuck in the middle. They need a role by which justifies us taking them. Yeah. Maybe they need a different weapon, a Warden Spear or something that's different. So it's not a direct comparison to other spear wielders or other axe wielders, right? Like, and then you're just literally comparing stats and they don't compare. So they just need to do something that those 2 units don't do. I don't know what that is. Maybe we'll ask Jeremiah next week, how he thinks, like, what they could do with Wardens. But, like, I mean, even giving them a 5-up Feel No Pain would give them some role. Like, okay, then you'll be like, okay, these guys have 5-up Feel No Pain, psychic meta, maybe they're gonna survive Smite Spam better than Shield Guard. Maybe they have a role now. I don't know, but it's like they're just like some dudes with like a useless Feel No Pain, and they have the same weapons as the other 2, and they're stuck in the middle. So yeah, so that's what they need. Yeah, so if you make like Wardens have some, like, I don't know. We'll talk about it next week. But they don't need points changes. They need different rules. Okay. How strong is BEL? Oh, behind enemy lines with Teleport Homer and yeah. So we talked about that. It's a decent combo if you build for it. Do you wish the Emperor wasn't such a jerk so that Magnus could have been usable in your army? Nope, Magnus is an ugly motherfucker. Last call for... Oh, that's my question. How much of a disappointment were the updates? That's good. I didn't have expectations. I didn't even know they were coming, so therefore there's no disappointment. And will you finally crack and soup? No, because that's the whole point of the channel is playing Pure. And what's with the empty shells? Yeah, we'll explain that at the beginning, Sean. It's the basement's getting renovated, so the shelves are empty. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so let's go back to Warden. So if they were our anti-psyker unit, since they already have the extra kind of 3-up deny versus the 4-up deny part of the stratagem, like, that would be a role, right? Like, but I feel like they think Sisters or Calexis is like the be-all and end-all of psychic denial. It really isn't. But if you had like 5 Wardens in the middle of your army, and basically they had like Abomination or like they have that Death Wing rule with the little dude who gives them 1 free deny per game or something, like, that's useful in a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortals. Like, yeah, like that becomes useful, and you consider that, especially if they're still 50 points. But like, they just got nothing right now. They're just like dudes with robes, and it's like, yeah. I actually use my Wardens as like Guardian models. It's just like the robes are cool, like they look cool, but Yeah, and like they got so much fluff, the wardens, right? Like they're the guys guarding like the black cages and stuff like that. I don't know. But they just have no role. Or maybe if there was like a shield host that focused more on wardens, right? Like it would be like maybe there's a shield host that's like more biker oriented, a shield host that's more like guardians, one that's more Terminator heavy, one that's more warden heavy. That could be cool. And then you could run a couple of shield hosts in the double patrol, and this would be where all your bikes are. And this would be like that would be a cool thing to do with shield hosts. So then one shield host is like more anti-psyker, and then one is like, just hard-hitting Terminators. Like that would be kind of cool. So maybe that's something they could do. I mean, as I've said, the design space possibilities is massive. Like we've seen in the codexes, there's a lot of new things they're coming up with these days. So the possibilities are endless. There's a lot of design space. So hopefully they're gonna do something cool. And actually, with every book that comes out, I'm getting more and more encouraged that A, we're gonna be good when we come out, and B, it's gonna be fun, and there's gonna be some new stuff in there. So I'm getting I am encouraged by every book that comes out that we're gonna be fine. So there you go. All right. So that is it, guys. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Thank you for listening and subscribing and being patrons and following. And do check out tomorrow night. We've got our podcast talking about these same things, but for the game as at large. And then Nick's stream on Thursday night for painting. Next week on Tactica, we will be having Jeremiah Pettit, aka Battle Juice, talking about wish listing for the new codex. That should be a fun show. So do join us as well for that. And otherwise, everybody take care, get vaccinated, and we'll see you guys next time.